Looking for a way to support the channel? Check out the official MTG Goldfish playmats like Fatal Scoops at mtggoldfishmerch.com/YouTube. Use the coupon code YouTube for 5% off. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, Tuesday means it's Type 2 or Standard Tuesday, and this week we are looking at a pretty sweet tribal deck, which is kind of interesting. This is Abzan Knights, and it comes to us from Love P, who took it to a 5-0 finish in a competitive Standard League on Magic Online. So congrats to Love P on a really sweet deck. And the cool thing about this deck is, while most of the pieces have been around for a while, we haven't gotten really any new Knights, or at least new meaningful Knights in Ravnica Allegiance. The mana base that is enabled by getting the rest of the shocklands, actually a pretty big deal to making this deck actually work. So a quick reminder before we break down Abzan Knights for Standard. If you enjoy this deck and you'll want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So Abzan Knights is a true Knight deck, rather than some decks we've seen. They have like History of Analia, maybe like a Knight of Glory. This deck is full on Knight Tribal, and the easiest way to know this is true is we have the full 4 copies of Valiant Knight, the Knight Lord from Core Set 2019. So 4 mana, it is a lot for a Lord, but you get a 3/4, it pumps all your other Knights +1/+1, which is nice, and then you can pay 5 and give all your Knights double strike, which is a pretty sweet way of closing out the game. Like, in theory, if our opponent doesn't have too many blockers, we can just curve out Knights from 1 up to 4, turn 5, activate Valiant Knight, and just kill our opponent. Our backup payoff, or one of them, is Benelish Marshal, and this is the card that I think benefits the most from having all the shocklands in the format. So Benelish Marshal might be one of the most powerful Knights in the format, a 3-mana Lord essentially. The problem is, it takes triple white mana to cast it, and in a world with only 5 shocklands, it's really hard to play cards like Benelish Marshal in a 3-color deck. We saw this with Goblin Chain Whirler too. You could play it in a mono red deck, you could play it in a maybe mono red splash deck, but you couldn't really play Chain Whirler in like a Jund deck. It's the same with Benelish Marshal. You could play it in mono white, you could play it in mono white with a slight splash, but now you can be a 3-color deck and still cast a Benelish Marshal on time with consistency, giving the deck another on-tribe Lord. We also have History of Analia, which bears mention because in this deck, it's not just a good value card. We see non-Knight decks that just play History of Analia because even on its own, it's really good. 2 2/2s, a big pump with the 3rd lore counter, that's fine. In this deck, it's way more scary because we have like 25 Knights or something in the deck. So the 3rd lore counter, it's not just pumping the 2 tokens it makes, it's pumping our entire board, which represents a ton of damage. So these cards are kind of the core reasons to play Knights, the payoffs for overloading our deck with Knights. Then we have all of our kind of support filler Knights. Dauntless Bodyguard gives us a Savannah Lions that has a little more relevance in the late game since we can sack it to protect something. So it's better than a traditional Savannah Lions as the game goes along. In the 2-drop slot, we get Knight of Grace and Knight of Malice, which are really powerful, basically being 3/2s with first strike much of the time, and having protection from 2 of the better removal colors in the standard format, or hexproof, I guess, not real protection. But these cards, tough to deal with for some decks, good on the ground on offense, good on the ground on defense, so very powerful 2-mana plays. In the 3-drop slot, we got a couple of interesting options. Knight of Autumn, the Swiss Army Knight, is actually very powerful in our current format. The life gain, good against aggro. The ability to blow up artifacts and enchantments makes Knight of Autumn good against control with Wilderness Reclamation, Search for Ascantas. So there's not a whole lot of matchups where Knight of Autumn is bad, and in the worst case, it's a 4/3 for 3, which is a fine deal on its own. And then we have 1 Midnight Reaper in the main deck. There's more in the sideboard, very good against control and grindy matchups where lots of stuff are dying, can be painful against aggro because of the damage we take, take, but we have one in the main deck as kind of a hedge, and then if we run into those slow, grindy control decks, we can just bring in a whole bunch of Midnight Reapers for a source of card advantage. Otherwise, a Johnny Adversary Tyrant, it's not a knight, but it's a very strong card. Pumping our creatures, reanimating our cheap knights, a good resilient threat. And then Seraph of the Scales, I don't know what to say about this one. It's not a knight, a little bit off tribe, but it is very good in certain matchups. I mean, it's good all the time. It's just a powerful card, but it's especially important in this deck, giving us a way to actually block something like a Crackling Drake, which otherwise our deck would really struggle to deal with. Good against mono blue as well, blocking multiple times against flyers. So it gives us an edge against things that our deck would otherwise not be very good at dealing with. So even though it's not a tribe member, it's still a very solid option. Think of it kind of like a utility spell. Like, this is almost a removal spell, but instead of a Vraska's Contempt, we're going with the Seraph, which can attack and can block multiple times in the air. Speaking of removal, pretty simple. 4 cast downs, about as easy and straightforward as it gets. Mana base wise, Unclaimed Territory gives us some nice untapped mana fixing, couple of shocklands, a Guild Gate, which it's a little bit awkward, but we can afford a couple of tap lands, Isolated Chapel, Sunfettle Grove, and a Plains. In the sideboard, we get the rest of the Midnight Reapers that we already talked about. Comes in against control, grindy decks. This is basically all control stuff here. Karn, also repeatable card advantage for the slower matchups. Duress to pick counter spells, sweepers out of our opponent's hand. Seraph of the Scales, resilient to removal thanks to the Afterlife giving us some tokens. For aggro, we get some Baffling Ends just to get rid of annoying early game creatures, and then for Sultai in specific, Tecatli Honor Guard, really good at shutting down Explorer creatures, Jade Light Rangers, and the like, and that is Abzan Knights for Standard. And that's been our Instant Deck Tech for today, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.